Hi. Thank you for attending today's reading. Let's begin. Preschool teacher scarred me for life. 17 comments. Share save hide report. 99% upvoted. End of story. Next story. I experienced something a child should never experience. I was born and raised in Malaysia. Till the age of around 9 or so, I was mainly raised by my grandparents while my parents commute between Malaysia and Singapore for work almost every day. As a result, the only time I get to see my parents was in the day if I happen to wake up early enough at around 4 to 5 a.m. when they get ready to cross the custom to Singapore for work, and late at night at around 11 to 12. Sometimes even 1 a.m. when they return from work. Then pick my younger sister and me back home from my grandparents' house. This tiring daily routine was basically what happens every day till I was 10 when I moved to Singapore together with my family for education. But that's a story for another day. Although it might sound tiring, I still had an amazing childhood with many beautiful memories with my grandparents. But one day, the most traumatizing day of my childhood, heck, my life even, that memory still haunts me today. It was like any other night. At 12 a.m., I was waiting for my parents to bring me back home from my grandparents while I try to stay awake, to hope to see my parents and share about my day at school. I knew that once I fall asleep I might never get to see them again until another day. Around 30 minutes later, I heard my father's car pulling up outside of the house. My barely awake grandmother carried my sleeping sister out of the house and handed her to my father, while I carried my school bag and entered the back of the car. My mother was always seated at the seat beside the driver's seat. I don't know what it's called, but you know what I mean. And would usually ask how my day was. But that day, she didn't. I was ready to share my experience in school that day, but the moment my father entered the car, I knew something was up. I shut my mouth and seated quietly at the back of the car, praying that none of them would speak a single word throughout the whole car ride, as I knew that would be the start of a literal never-ending nightmare. My prayers came true, for the period of the car ride at least. As we entered the house and all prepared to sleep, we all slept in the same room together at the time, without a single word spoken. My father switched off the lights and went onto the bed. I was dead tired, so I was able to fall asleep very quickly. Then I was woken up by whispers, mumbles, and arguments in the middle of the night. They were so soft but yet sounded so aggressive that I was unable to go back to sleep anymore. I knew these exchanges of arguments would eventually build up to an eruption of anger sooner or later. The words they were saying were something I would never be able to understand as an 8-year-old kid. At that moment, lying down beside them was giving me confusion and immense fear. Before I knew it, I heard my father scream, "I've had enough of you," and moved. Thing is, I couldn't tell where or how he was moving. It was still a complete darkness. The argument had become way too loud that I could no longer handle the inability to see my surroundings clearly and fear of plain darkness while being surrounded by such loud and aggressive shoutings. I ran towards the light switch and switched on the lights. What I saw next was something I could never forget for the rest of my life, and destroyed my understanding of the word family at the age of 8. There I saw my father sitting on my mother's chest while placing his hands close to her neck, trembling, and struggling to reach them, almost as if he was trying to stop his own hands. My mother just stared at my father with hatred. Those pair of eyes was something I had never seen before. "Are you trying to kill me now?" my mother asked. There was no reply from my father. Unsurprisingly, my sister, who was lying down beside me the entire time, was awake as well. She saw the scene and crawled to my parents and screamed to tell them to stop immediately. I didn't do anything. I couldn't. I was stunned. Rather than sadness. Fear was what had drowned my mind back then. Seeing the unfamiliar sides of my parents that I had never seen before made me feel as if I was in a room with 3 other strangers. I felt all alone. Tears left my father's eyes as he looked at my sister and me. He stormed out of the room, and soon enough I heard an engine started as the car left the house. My mother paused for a little moment, then ran to my sister and carried her in her arms. While still having an emotional breakdown, my sister cried for the rest of that night, while continuously asking, "Why can't you two just stop fighting?" Quote, "My mother didn't have an answer. I wish she did. I wish any one of them had told me the reason for this." Their quarrels have luckily become a rare occasion today. But whenever any one of my parents start to raise their voice even just by a little, whether intentionally or not, my heart would always skip a beat. I can't shake that image of the different sides of my parents that was never shown to me before off my mind. That moment of my childhood as an 8-year-old has never left me. And I don't think it ever will. End. I apologize if my English was poor in this. I've been having a bad week and just wanted to share some of my stories. Do share with me about how you feel about this story. This is my first time writing online as well. End of story. Next story. I looked older than my age. And it brought really interesting experiences. I was 13. And looked like a teenager preparing for college. I am not even tall. So basically, I headed out with father to a restaurant to meet his friends one night. I was 5 feet 1. And was 13. Entering the establishment, I expected to be treated as a child because 13 isn't that old. Surprisingly, the server, which I assumed was older than me, because you can't have a job unless you are over 16 in my country, called me madam. She was shorter than me. And she was small. If that wasn't soul-crushing enough, my father's friend also asked if I had entered college yet. Jesus. I am not that old. Moreover, when I was meeting my new piano teacher, she asked for my age. I told her I was 13 and preparing to enter 8th grade. She has this expression like, "Wow." I felt fine, but a bit angry. Friends and relatives often act surprised when they know my age. Am I really that old? I guess. Because I am calm most of the time. I preferred to sit alone rather than running around like other people my age. It made me doubt myself for a while. End of story. That is all for today. If you want to support my automated channel, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.